Good morning. Well, I guess good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I am making the Charlotte Hornets offseason preview video, and this is a team that's in a pretty fun position, actually. Going into this year, everyone thought that they were probably in the worst position of any team in the NBA, and throughout the season, we saw Devontae Graham take a big step forward, PJ Washington take a big step forward, Terry Rozier prove that signing him wasn't a terrible idea, although he wasn't worth $19 million per year. He wasn't terrible. And really, we just showed that this organization has some fight to him, and James Borrego can be a pretty solid coach. So let's get right into this. Borrego is the coach, like I said. This guy seems like a good coach. He's got his team playing hard, even though this year they really were one of the least talented rosters in the entire NBA. They still played hard, still competed night in and night out, and were able to finish as the, I think, ninth best team in the NBA. They weren't invited to the bubble, but because of the Wizards losing ways in the bubble, they were able to pass them in the win-loss column. So that was very impressive for a team that a lot of people picked to be the worst team in the NBA. Ended up being a not quite middle of the road team, but a solid team. So big kudos to James Borrego for being a really good coach for this team. With the third pick in the draft, there's a lot of ways they could go. Obviously, they got really lucky moving up from 8 to 3. Out of all the teams in the lottery, this is the team that I wanted to see win it just because of how hard they competed this past year and the fact that they didn't throw in the towel even though they were the less talented team almost every game. So I was happy to see their effort, and even it goes all the way back through the Kemba Walker era. Like they always competed, they always tried, they never tanked, and I'm glad to see that they were rewarded for that with the third pick. There's a couple things they could do with this pick. If LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards don't go 1 and 2, they should definitely draft one of those guys. So if basically the Warriors draft Wiseman, and then the Wolves, I think the Wolves should take LaMelo, and then the Warriors should take Edwards. So that would probably leave Charlotte with James Wiseman, which I don't think is the best for them. Although we've seen the big man position kind of back on the rise with the success of Bam Adebayo and Nikola Jokic. Gobert and Embiid obviously are really good players. Maybe the big man is kind of on the rise again, and James Wiseman has shown that he's a super talented player. He looks like he's going to be a all defensive team caliber guy for the once he adjusts to the NBA. So by the end of his rookie deal, I'd say he'll be competing for an all NBA defensive spot if I had to make that prediction. So maybe that is a decent spot for them to go, but I don't think that he has all-star level potential. I think that he's going to be a good starter, probably above average starter player, but I don't think that he can be an all-star. I think the only two guys that can be all-stars in this draft are LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. And Killian Hayes is a little bit of a sneaky guy there. I really like Killian, but I do not think that the Hornets should take him third overall just because he hasn't shown the same ceiling as Edwards, Ball, and Wiseman. So I think that if Ball and Edwards are both off the board for them there, they should think about trading up. There's been rumors of the Timberwolves and Warriors wanting to trade down and get an asset, and I think that the Hornets should really look to move up. I think that a package of Miles Bridges and the third overall pick could get them to number 1. And I think that that's a trade I would probably do if I were the Hornets, and I would trade up for LaMelo Ball. I think that that is the best player in the draft, LaMelo. That is, he has the highest ceiling, and he showed potential to be a generational passer. So I really like LaMelo. He's my top prospect at this point, I would say, and I'd say that he's the guy they should take if they trade up for that first pick, and that's something that I would suggest that they do because I think that he is a good enough upgrade over Wiseman that it's worth giving up Miles Bridges for. Bridges is he's a good not really good, but he's a good player. He's still young, and he's shown that he's going to be a starter level guy, but I don't think that there's anything close to an all-star ceiling for him. So I would be a big fan of the Hornets trading up for the first pick and giving up Bridges. I also think that Bridges is probably at his best at the 4 instead of the 3, and PJ Washington looks like he's going to be a starter at the 4 for this Hornets team for the foreseeable future. So I think that a trade of Miles Bridges in the 3rd pick to move up in the draft could be something really, really good for them. If the Timberwolves don't want to do that, they could try like the 3rd pick and Cody Zeller for number 2. I think that Zeller would fit into the Andre Iguodala trade exception, and maybe the Warriors would like to have Zeller to fill in that hole they have at the center position. So maybe 3 and Zeller can get them up to 2. Maybe they have to throw in the 32nd pick, which they also have. But I just really think that they should emphasize getting one of those all-star caliber guys in LaMelo and Edwards. If they can't make that deal work, I also think that they could consider trading down. I like James Wiseman better than Onyeka Okongwu, but I don't like him enough that I don't think that trading down to the 7th pick with the Pistons, maybe the Pistons want to trade, I don't know. I'm just saying a trade down could be potentially possible. Maybe that trade is down to 8 with the Knicks, if the Knicks want to trade up. But a trade down, I think, is much less likely than a trade up for the Hornets. I really would love to see them try to get LaMelo or Anthony Edwards in this draft. They could also draft Obi Toppin. In the past, this team has shown a preference for players that were successful at the college level. Last year, they drafted P.J. Washington, who was an All-American. 2 years ago, they drafted Devontae Graham in the 2nd round, and who was an All-American, and Miles Bridges in the 1st round, who was an All-American. The year before that, they drafted... was that the Malik Monk year? Malik Monk was a very good college player. Kemba, obviously, was one of the greatest college players... went on one of the greatest college player runs we've ever seen back when they drafted him. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist was a All-American. Cody Zeller was an All-American. All of these guys that they've drafted have been All-Americans. Frank Kaminsky. They've shown a preference for guys that have been successful at the college level. So all of this just comes back to the fact that I believe that this team could potentially take Obi Toppin if they just continue to show this preference for guys that have been really successful in college. They also have the 32nd pick. Some guys I like in this area. If they want to go with a guard, I think if Malachi Flynn is still on the board, that's a really good pick for them. But they do have a plethora of guards in like Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, Malik Monk. If they take LaMelo or Anthony Edwards with their 1st round pick, that's another guard on their roster. The Martin twins, although they are probably more forwards than guards, so I don't know what I'm saying there, but I guess they probably wouldn't want to take another guard, but it's the 2nd round. You should take anyone if you think they have potential to be a rotation level NBA player. Xavier Tillman is probably my favorite big guy in this area, and I also do like Zeke Naji. Those are definitely some big guys that they should look at. Tillman as a smaller guy who just has a good feel for the game, can't necessarily switch on to the best guards in the game, like James Harden and Steph Curry, but can switch on to an average replacement level guard as a kind of switchable but not completely switchable big guy. And Najee is similar, and there's been reports that he is developing a pretty solid jump shot. So those would be my 2 guys in this area for bigs. And if they want to go with a wing, which I think is probably the most likely thing for them with this 2nd round pick, guys like Elijah Hughes, Robert Woodard, Desmond Bane, Cassius Stanley, Josh Green. I'm sure at least a couple of those guys could be on the board, and they could draft whoever they like out of that group. They also have the 56th pick, but who cares? It's the 56th pick. That works out like once every 20 years probably. In terms of trades, Devontae Graham is going to be a restricted free agent after next season, and he's one of those players that I could just really see getting overpaid. So I think that they should look to trade Devontae. He's shown that he's a really, really good starter level player and that he can really play. So I definitely think that there would be a market for him. I think a good team would be interested in having his skill set as a really good guy at catching, shooting, and also a guy who can hit pull-up jumpers as well as an exceptional passer. So if the right trade offer comes along, they should look to trade Devontae Graham because I think that he's going to get overpaid in the summer of 2020-21. There's a lot of teams that have a lot of cap space, and if they strike out on the big names, guys are going to get overpaid like we saw in the summer of 2016, and Devontae Graham could potentially be one of those guys who gets overpaid. So that's the one guy on this roster I think they could really look at trading. The only other trade that could potentially happen would be a trade up or trade down in the draft. With free agency, some guys they could target. This is really just a team I think that should try to use some of their cap space on restricted free agent guys that they think could end up panning out. Probably the biggest name that they could look at is like Christian Wood, who had a big breakout year, or really just a breakout month for the Pistons, but is probably going to get paid between $10 and $15 million per year based solely off of that month of production. So maybe they like Wood. This team definitely has a hole at center, and if they don't end up drafting James Wiseman, do they want to go into next season with Cody Zeller as their starting center? Probably not. So maybe throwing a 3-year, $45 million contract at Christian Wood wouldn't be the worst idea. I would advise against it just because I don't think I've seen enough from this guy to consider him to really be a guy worth getting paid that sum of money. But he also put up a lot of production on a team that didn't have much, so who knows? Maybe he's a guy that you can take a flyer on, but I think if the Pistons are probably going to pay him anything up to $15 million per year, so if you're forced to overpay for him, I definitely think that takes away from some of his value. Other guys, Harry Giles could be, we got a wasp here. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that, I just had to deal with that wasp. Kind of fitting, because this is a Hornets video. A conspiracy theory. Maybe they heard me talking about their team and they sent over a representative or something. I don't know. But, yeah. Back to the video. Harry Giles could be another guy that he's a big guy who flashed some potential and was considered a guy who could go number 1 overall when he was coming out of high school. He struggled in college, so he ended up dropping in the draft. But he's definitely a guy who you could offer a contract and maybe he pans out for you. The Kings probably are not going to be able to bring him back. My wasp friend is back, so I'm going to move a little bit. Try to see if we can get rid of him, but yeah, Harry Giles could be another target. Malik Beasley is another guy they could throw some money at and see if the Timberwolves are willing to match, just as a guy who can be a scorer for them. However, this team has struggled on defense, and adding another guy who can get you buckets but can't really play great defense might be something I'd advise against for them. Which brings me to another restricted guy that I would really like his fit with this team, and that's Chris Dunn. I'm not sure if the Bulls are going to bring him back or not, but if they aren't going to, this could be a really, really good fit for him. This team has a lot of guards, as I mentioned, but there are a lot of offensive-minded guards, and Chris Dunn is a really, really good defender. So to add him to a young core as just a stopper could be a very useful addition for this team. The last guy I want to talk about is Derrick Jones Jr., just another good defender, and maybe the Heat let him walk, but I don't really see that happening because, well, they do want to keep cap space for next offseason, so he could be a really nice addition for them as a quality forward. Moving forward. Haha. So their potential 2020-2021 rotation, Devontae Graham at the point guard, Chris Dunn at the 2 guard. I really, really like that signing, so I decided to throw his name onto my potential rotation. Miles Bridges at the 3, PJ Washington at the 4, Wiseman at the 5. Like I said, I don't think they should draft Wiseman. I think they should try to trade up, but I think them drafting Wiseman is probably the most likely scenario. And then off the bench, something like Terry Rozier, Nick Batum, Cody Zeller, Malik Monk, Cody Martin, Caleb Martin, Dwayne Bacon could be a guy who takes a step forward into a rotational piece. So thanks for watching. I really think that this is an interesting team, and I think they should try to get LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards to be their all-star for the future. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you think of this team and what they're going to be like in the future. That's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all again very soon.